Hey, this is Todd, and I wanted to create a quick video as a new GM primer. I see a lot of questions on Reddit. I think I probably see myself personally about a dozen a day in various subs, and I'm sure there are many more in which people come in, they're new to the game, new to the hobby, they either want the GM or they've taken on the responsibility of GMing, and they are then lost. They don't know what they need, they don't know what to do, and they come looking for help. And I feel like I'm always entering into those threads and posting the same sort of information over and over again. So I thought, why not make a quick video to at least give an overview of the sort of things that you need to DM. So the first question that often comes up is, what materials do I need? Now, these are great books, and eventually you will need them since they have the full basic set of the rules. Or I shouldn't say basic, the full complete set of the rules. But you do not need them right away, and at $50 a pop, MSRP, you'll usually find them on retail unless you get lucky and find them discounted on a sale and obviously potentially used. They're expensive, and you don't need them to play the game. They give you the complete, as I mentioned, the complete set of rules, but you can get started, especially if you just want to get your feet wet and you want to try it out and you have a new group and new players and you're new and you're not sure if you're going to like it. You don't need to jump into the deep end, so to speak. There is a great box set that Wizards put out, Wizards of the Coast, who published the game. They put it out for new GMs and new players. It's called the Starter Kit. I think they have a Stranger Things now version of the Starter Kit, but I haven't really looked at that one, so I'm not sure if that's a real starter one or whatever it is, and I don't know if there's a premium for it playing off of the Stranger Things brand. But anyway, here's the classic one, Starter Kit. I think the Starter Kit goes for, let's see, it looks like 20 bucks. So $20 has everything you need. Dice, rules, pre-gen characters, and probably most importantly, besides the rules, Lost Mines of Phandelver. Lost Mines is a really good starter adventure. It's not perfect. Okay, I think when people say Lost Mines gets a lot of love on the internet, and you get some, every once in a while get some pushback about, oh, it's not really that good. It's got these problems, and it totally has problems. It is totally imperfect. But what it is very good at, and what it's really its purpose is, that I think it does a good job at, is that it is not only a starter adventure for new players, it's a starter adventure for new GMs. And so you can read through this. If you end up playing through it, it kind of brings everybody in. If we're talking about buying the big books as jumping in the deep end, this adventure is all about kind of wading into the water at a pace that you can find yourself comfortable in. And because it only requires the basic set of rules, these rules over here, you can run everything right out of the box. You could grab some people, buy that box set, read it over on Friday or Saturday, play it on Saturday or Sunday, or at least get started, because it'll probably take more than a few. I don't know how many sessions it takes to run, but it's a good one. Now, it does take place in the Forgotten Realms. If you want to do a complete homebrew, you would probably want to make some changes to this. It's not a campaign, so it'll take a handful of sessions to run, and then it'll sort of open you up, and then you can really run. If you're running in Forgotten Realms, if you're running something else, you can really open up and to run anything you want to do. It's not locking you into a long-term campaign. It just sort of helps get the ball rolling, getting everybody comfortable with the rules and putting them into the most common and interesting situations you can get in the game. There are also several characters that show up, and depending on how the party acts and reacts to those characters, you might have long-term NPCs to use or villains that you can throw into campaigns down the line. It's got a lot going on. It touches on a lot of different sort of elements of the game. It's great. I would say even if you don't intend to run it, if you want to do homebrew, which is fine. I'm not someone who says as a new GM you shouldn't touch homebrew. Absolutely do what is going to excite you. If something like Forgotten Realms and Lost Mines is not exciting to you and your own homebrew is, by all means run homebrew. Your excitement, your drive is going to do more for the game than sticking to some material because you heard somebody say this is what you should start with. Do what you feel. But with that said, if you end up buying the starter kit, which again I recommend, it's worth reading through Lost Mines, you can get a sense of how they build encounters, which is not the only way by far you need to do it. And they're not always done correctly or well, but you can sort of get the basics of how they're putting it together, the sort of progression that happens, all these different things there's a lot you can mine out of the Lost Mines, I guess pun intended, that is worth reading through it, even if you don't intend to run it. The other thing with this module is that it has tons of support online. So many people have played through it and run it that if you ask questions about it anywhere, you're gonna find people who are gonna have answers because so many people have run through it. There's a lot of support out there for it. And then eventually you will want to get the big books, and there are many more books besides. But just even these three, this is 150 bucks worth of investment in books, and they're heavy. You'll see people online saying, "Oh, everybody's got to have. I like to have 2 players' handbooks and 3 of this." Well, that's fine if you can afford it and everyone wants it. That's great. Start off with a starter kit. Invest in these when you need them, when you feel like they're going to fill gaps, when you think you need some extra material, when you're ready for that more in-depth rules and you're ready for more material, then go in there. But you don't need to rush it. And there is a lot online. If you put in your favorite search engine, 5th edition SRD, that has the same copy of the publicly available basic rules you can find. There's obviously tons of homebrew stuff on DM Guild. You have D&D Beyond that has the rule set. If you decide you're playing online and you want to subscribe to that service, you have everything at your fingertips. So there's a lot of different ways you can access the rules before you want to lay down money. Obviously, eventually, I feel like they're great to have. There's a lot of good advice in the Dungeons Master's Guide, for example. But I wouldn't worry about that up front. So you've got your rules. You've got either the starter kit. You have some idea what you're going to run. Next thing you want to do is, obviously, you want to kind of have an idea of what kind of campaign you want to run. Or if it's a one-shot, right? What kind of adventure is it? And the reason that's important is a big thing is setting expectations. You're going to get a party of people around a table, and you want to, as much as you can, make sure that everybody's on the same page for the style of game we're running, what you're expecting of them, what they should expect from you. You want to be on the same page. It is not given that you will be. Even if you're pulling in friends, it's not a given. Everyone has different ideas in their mind, particularly if you're starting out, about what the game should be. You'll have heard the term, I'm sure, murder hobo and that sort of thing. Some players are going to get in the mix, and they're going to take their characters, just want to kill everything that moves. Some players are going to get in their characters and just be obsessed with sort of messing around in the world. Not necessarily killing anything, but not really following a plot line. They're going to want to, you could have set up, the barn's on fire, and you think, oh, well, sure, the players are going to take their characters and they're going to go put out the barn fire, and then this is going to happen. And then the party decides to put more kindling on the fire. The bard goes to town to buy marshmallows. The farmer comes out begging for their help, and the fighter kills them. All kinds of things can happen. It's worth having that conversation as you're getting everybody with their characters set up about, hey, here's how I want to play the game. Here is the type of game we're playing. Is it going to be combat heavy? Is it going to be a big dungeon crawl? Is there going to be a lot of overland exploration? Do I want to do a lot of role playing, and we're going to concentrate on social things? These are all elements you want to get out of the way. Is it going to be sandbox? Is it going to be a more strict narrative kind of game? You want to get those all out of the way as soon as you can, so that at least you have set down sort of, you're making this contract with the table of, here's the game we're going to play. And if later on people don't like it or they fade in or out, at least you can say, hey, this is what we set down, this is what we all signed up for. But better to know in advance that one of your players isn't in on that, another player, they're not that iffy, they're iffy on that element. Get it all hashed out, find some common ground. Sooner the better up front. And again, you can search Session 0 in your search engine of choice, and you'll find tons of resources. Part of that I want to touch on, because I think it's very important, is creating characters. If you're not going to use, say, pre-gens, and I don't know if the pre-gens do all the background stuff for you. I think they do a lot. But one of the things that GMs like to do is get backgrounds from their characters, from the player characters, histories. What are these characters? How do they get to be adventurers? And that's fine. But often they're done in isolation, so that one player will go off and do his character story over here, another player will go off and do their character story. My suggestion to you, get everybody as part of that Session 0 when you're doing sort of a pre-game game night or day or game session. Get everybody together in one place, do it all together. And the reason is, This stuff, backgrounds can be divisive. If one guy's playing the dark elf princess who wants to go back and reclaim her kingdom, and another guy comes from a family who hates dark elves and he wants to go back to his family farm to save them from being enslaved by the desert tribes, and some other guy, he wants to reclaim his family's merchant empire that fell into bankruptcy. It's all going to send them out in different directions. They're going to want to scatter, right? Because players, once they create these stories, they really get a lot of fulfillment out of completing them, and you know, they start to live in that character, and they really want to fulfill these things that they set out to do. But that's pulling the party in all kinds of different directions. And you as the GM, particularly when you're starting out, you're going to be enthusiastic. You're going to want to draw on all these stories to give all your players the best time possible. And you're going to look at it and you're going to say, my God, there's no way I can possibly get all this stuff out in any given campaign. I can't go and do this one because his family hates them. This guy's going to the other side of the world. How am I going to get all this together? It can be challenging. It can feel impossible. And it can feel like a thankless task. So instead, during that session 0, have everybody talk about not only where their characters come from and maybe what their characters' overarching goals are, but how do they know each other? Why are you the Dark Elf Princess and you the fighter and you the bard that's the merchant son from the other side of the continent? Why are you all here together? And not only that, why do you stick together? There's always the meta concept of, hey, you're playing a game and we're all going to be playing together, so naturally we should just do things together. But that sometimes falls apart. I have theories, I'm not going to get into them right now as to why that might be the case, but it happens. And even though you know that as players, we're all supposed to play together, so I shouldn't run and run into a teleport circle and jump back to my merchant city when we're all supposed to be going the other direction. But it happens. So what this does is this gives the party a glue, so that at any moment when they're asking, well, why should I do this or why am I going with them? You know why, because you sat around and came to a discussion of why. So, okay, Dark Elf Princess, here this human fighter, sometime in the past he saved your life, or you saved his life. Now he has sworn to protect you. So if you decide to go off this way, he's going to go with you. Oh, and Dark Elf Princess, you made something with the merchant, and so you've agreed to help him. And so everybody has a reason to stick together, and if you're going to go off on tangents, fulfilling some of these backstory goals, then you all can go together. And if somebody asks, well, why would my human character want to go down into the Underdark to deal with the Dark Elves? You know the answer's already been there. It's been there since the characters were generated, and because they've come up with it and done it all themselves, hopefully they have that buy-in, that where they all feel good about it and they all feel like this is part of their characters. It's not just my story, it's the party's story. And that's really what you want to get. You want to get the party thinking about the party story, not just their own personal branches that they're trying to do. So session 0, do some group backstories, connect all the groups together, do everything together. If you're making characters from scratch, use the same methodology. I think the points array or the point buy or score array is better than dice. A lot of people get into dice, but the problem with dice is some people may roll really high, some people roll really low, and they got to put them together. So points array, but again, you can get into more. I'll probably do a video just on session 0, since there is a lot of things you can do with it, but just the big thing is have one. Talk about what your game is like. Do character generation together, or at least the basic elements of it, so that everyone has a shared idea of what they're playing, and not only what they're playing and who they're playing and what their stories might be, but how their stories are stories together, how this is a tale that you're going to be creating together of this party as a group, and not of just some individuals that happen to all be at the tavern at the same time. Not that you can't we all meet in the tavern, but I think particularly with players, newer players, new GMs, you want to make this as frictionless an experience as possible, and part of removing that friction is creating these built-in mechanisms for keeping the party glued together. So that's it. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about is don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. If you ever heard that phrase, what it means basically is you can think you're being a perfectionist, or you can be a perfectionist, but what all that may be doing for you is preventing you from actually doing anything. So I will see sometimes people saying, I can't make this map because I can't make a beautiful map like some of the ones I see on cartography Reddits. or my story's not as good as these stories, so I'm stuck or I can't do it. And all these things are doing is they're just setting up barriers, that are going to be you're putting in front of yourself that are going to prevent you from playing and enjoying the game. And that's the biggest thing is you have to just play. You have to just live with the fact and be okay with the fact you're going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to make mistakes. You're going to get rules wrong. You're going to actually do stuff. Sometimes you're going to make encounters that may be too easy that you wanted to be hard. Some encounters are going to be too hard that you thought would be easy. Everything is going to go wrong, You can't stop it. You can't prevent it. Your story is not going to be the best story ever told. Your maps are not going to be the best maps that are ever been drawn. Everything is going to be imperfect. And guess what? It's okay. It's fine. Nobody's stuff is perfect, regardless of how long they've been playing. And certainly when you're starting out, your stuff's going to be far from perfect. But as the saying goes, practice makes perfect. If you never play because you're waiting for everything to be perfect, you'll never play. If you're waiting for, I have to have the perfect campaign and the perfect maps and the perfect encounters, well, then just put everything back in the box and send it back to wherever you got it from, or give it to somebody else, or leave it on the street. You're never going to play the game. Just be fine with failing. What you want to do, it's really not about the failure part. It's about how you handle the failure. And the big thing is just embrace it. My bad. I got it wrong. If it's something that we can fix, we can fix. If we can't, then say, look, that just happened. I'm sorry it happened. It was my bad. I won't do it again. Let's figure out how to get by it. Right? Because you're going to make mistakes. And not all of them you can undo. You may not even find out about one until the next session, and just too much stuff has happened. You don't want to rewind everything. So you just say, okay, my bad. Sorry, I thought you could use it on a long, before you've taken a short rest and it was a long rest, or I gimped you on this by accident. I looked up the rule, and now going forward, here's what it is. Sorry, my bad, move on. That's the thing, is you want to move on. Just address everything, take responsibility for what's yours, discuss everything with the table, be as transparent as possible, learn from it, move on. You can't prevent your mistakes. You can't prevent failure. You just try to do better, right? Just use each session as saying, hey, I did these things, do better. And part of that is you can get feedback. Part of that is just, being able to just be self-reflective enough to look at it and not take it as a personal, right? Nothing's personal. You make a mistake, it doesn't say anything personally about you if you got a particular rule wrong. And look, some of these rules are not easy, and there's lots of fiddly language, and people will talk about rules as written versus rules as intended, and there's a lot of interactions. Don't worry about it. You're going to make all those mistakes. Everyone makes those mistakes. The big thing is don't let them get you down. Get into the game. Play it with the group that you have assembled, and then you all learn together, and it's a great time. So just embrace everything. Play it. Just to rewind back to what I was talking about at the beginning, if you can, start with the starter set. If you don't want to spend any money, the basic rules are there. If you have any dice from different things, you can use it. There's plenty of digital die rollers that are free. You've got that. If you do end up buying that, Lost Minds, great to start. But even if you don't, you can use it as a learning tool, as a resource to just read about adventures. There's lots of campaign books that you can get if you want to stay in Forgotten Realms and do that. Obviously, you do eventually have these books, but wait until you need them. Maybe as a GM, the most important one might be the Monster Manual, just because it has so much, stuff. You're going to be looking for creatures in different situations. They've got a lot. There's a ton you can find online, varying quality depending on if they're official or not. Monster Manual at least has the official ones, and you'll learn down the line where you want to tweak them and whatnot. It's a good resource to have. Lots of advice in the DMG. I think eventually I definitely advise it for GMs just because it just gives you more detail, gives you a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. Just has a lot of interesting things about the process and what you can do and how things work. But you don't need it. It's probably the least necessary book. And then, for the full, at least not expanded, because there's expansions now that have extra rules and extra stuff, but as far as the base complete set of classes, races, whatnot, and rules and combat and all that, Player's Handbook is where it's at. But again, start with this. Just trying a one-shot, you're just getting your feet wet. This is really, really all you need. I can't really impress upon that enough. It's all you need. And then once you have that stuff, session 0 with your players, do your character generation, get your party all locked up, talk about expectations and the game you're going to run, and make sure everyone's on the same page about everything that's going to happen, and then relax, take a breath, play the game, roll some dice, see what happens. So I hope that was useful to you, and I'll talk to you later.